Hello and namaskar. Welcome to PGurus Prime Time. And as always, I have with me Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. This is episode 18 of Ask Me Anything with Abhijit. Abhijit, welcome to PGurus channel.
Vetrivel, and thanks for having me here as always.
And Vetrivel, Veeravel, Abhijit, we'll jump straight into questions because we seem to be able to run up a huge backlog. Some of these questions are from last week. I hope the viewers are tuned in to listen to your questions being asked. The first question is from Mr. Lee. What do you make of the fourth turning hypothesis of Neil Howe and William Strauss that proposes that crises every 80 years shape the United States of America? Do some similar cycles happen with India also?
You see, the problem is it isn't a very good cycle to be worried about in India's case. Because in India's case, what happens is dynasties as a rule seem to only last for 80 to 90 years. The mean is between 80 to 90 on one hand, particularly unstable dynasties, and 120 years for a particularly stable dynasty. So depending on your point of view, we're very close to the end of a dynasty. You decide if it's a high end or a low end dynasty.
Are you talking about the Congress dynasty?
No, dynasties, by dynasties, I mean, periods. So for example, the Hoysalas, the Choras, things like that.
Empire.
You see, they last one peak period and then they decline very rapidly and then they come back for a second period or they don't come back at all. Right, Vijayanagara, all of that. You can see these ebbs and flows. Mughals, in fact, during the Sultanate period, the average declined very, very significantly. The average mean was something like 30-40 years only. So given that we've lasted more than 30-40 years, we're clearly not a Delhi Sultanate dynasty. But, stability periods, stable periods are marked 80 to 90 years to 120 years.
Next question is from Indranil Gokhale. What is being done or needs to be done to revamp UPSC, Union Public Service Commission, from leftist agenda theories and leftist thought processes?
One is revamping all the university syllabus. That is most important. Second is revamping your, which forces the professors, irrespective of their own ideology, to teach what is actually prescribed. Number two, you need to bring in questioning modules. You can't just have the standard practice of one exam followed by one interview. There needs to be a skills matching module where you don't just take the UPSC and get into whatever you got. You have to aim for a specific thing. For example, even in foreign policy, you need to aim for some specific countries. And if you don't get those countries, you're not allowed to keep changing countries in the hope you will get in. The problem right now is it's a blank-ended exam where it's a potluck. If you get in, then you get to choose wherever you want to go based on your score. That is not how it should work. You need to, the state doesn't have the ability to build up core competence. So you need to allow, like, for example, with electricity, the government can't supply electricity to everyone, so everybody has their own generator or inverter or something, so they put in private investment. So if you want to get into government, you put in private investment into getting core niche capability in specific sectors. And at that point of time, once you've already gotten there, you need to keep doing modules based for your promotion, where you get validation from policy circles, and you have to be do through life training, blind exams where the marking can be extremely brutal to you. They're not going to give you good marks just because you're a babu. You can't have seniority based promotions, and there have to be clear parameters for policy. You have to have failure standards, which is, you say that if 50% of these parameters are not met, the policy will be considered a failure, and it goes as a black tick in the record against the babu who proposed it and things like that. So there are a lot of steps you can do. You don't need to get rid of the UPSC. What it needs is fine tuning, because what has happened since the Curzon's time is there's been hyper specialization. So you need hyper specialized people. In fact, you need a bigger government. You just need government to not invest in useless things like public sector industry and all that nonsense. It just needs to be focused on one thing, which is governance and regulation. That's it.
Now, one of the things that you're proposing, and I hope that somebody from the PMO office is watching this program, and it is a very excellent point, because we have too many generalists, and these generalists are good for nothing. Jack of all trades doesn't cut it anymore. What you want is master of many trades. Don't have to be all, but be master of more than one trade. That way you make yourself be useful in more than one place. This is just my variation on what you said. I believe that you can do more than one.
I would disagree with this point on generalists. You do need generalists to do the macro, to absorb all the hyper specialized information in each department, and you then need to somebody to synthesize policies across the various silos. So for example, like we've discussed on this program, defense policy is based on your industrial policy and your education policy. Without an education and industrial policy, your defense policy is a farce. So you need somebody doing that macro, but that macro is done by the minister. And this is why you need training for ministers as well, that they need to be in a shadow cabinet. There should be some requirement that they publish academic papers and things like that, so that they have a known set of expertise in particular fields and so on and so forth, where they at least know the basics of their job. The third most important thing, which is the creation of a completely new department, not a sad, pathetic joke like the Niti Aayog. What you need is an actual Bureau of Statistics. That will be all the statistics is given to just one department, and they collect statistics throughout the year, year after year, year after year, so that babus who are sitting in their district level, drinking endless cups of tea, are all given statistical parameters, statistical deadlines to fill, so that the moment they enter office, they don't even have time for a single cup of tea or coffee to be drunk or useless phone calls to be had. They need to be doing data entry as well as while they're going along, or they need to be out in the field gathering their data to feed into the Bureau of Statistics. Check out the Australian Bureau of Statistics. I think it's abs.gov.au. Very important site, because what they do is they collect all extremely in-depth statistics for everyone. The government, of course, gets to use it free because they fund the department, but any company coming in pays them for statistics depending on the level of depth and clarity. You pay more or less, and it becomes an invaluable product. Right now, we have feelings-based policy. India is the ultimate woke country because we've never had data-based policy. In India, data is a colonial mindset. It is only feelings that matter. To be Indian is to have feelings, not to have data.
You have an excellent point, Abhijit. I couldn't agree with you more on the data collection and to make it as accurate as possible. Because once it is known that this is the best repository of data about India, you will have people lining up to pay for the data and its services, because that's how you can come up with new product ideas, where to direct your inventory and so on and so forth. I can't say enough good things about it. Let's move on to the next question from P. Ram. Is it a good idea to add the vocabulary of all regional languages in Hindi and develop its scientific vocabulary, or should we have Sanskrit instead?
Look, I've told you this before. Don't fetishize language. Don't get into this trap of fetishizing language. Language is purely a means of communicating from one person to another. It is the fidelity of the communication that matters, not the means of communication that matter. Speak in French, speak in German, speak in binary for all I care. Okay, the problem in India is we tend to fetishize language a bit too much, and we're not focused on what the language should be doing. Okay, even in Tamil, I can tell you when he talks to me in Chase Tamil, I don't even know what he's talking about most of the times. I only speak two kinds of Tamil. One is Brahminical Tamil, the second is Cheri Tamil, fisherman Tamil. I speak very good Tamil when I go to buy fish or meat or mutton in the morning from that local marina beach. And I can speak very good Mylapore Agraharam Tamil. That's about it. You bring me all this chaste literature and all of that, I won't get head or tail of it. So why do you have three different languages even within one language? Okay, even in Hindi, The level of Urdu admixture here or Punjabi admixture these days that comes in is ridiculous. Okay, most people don't even know what the purest form of Hindi is in that sense. So stop fetishizing language. You want to get down to the purest Indian discovery, then it's 0 and 1. Indian numeral and 0. Get down to it. Teach everybody to speak binary and understand binary.
And those of you who live, whose mother tongue is not any of the southern languages, try and address your friends, your colleagues in their mother tongue. Just learn a couple of words and address them. Namaskara for a Kannada speaking person, Namaskaramu for a Telugu speaking person, Namaskar for.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, I want to do that. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
No.
Will you let me finish what I'm saying?
See, you should first of all, people should learn to speak their own mother tongues properly. They should learn to speak Hindi properly. They should learn to speak Tamil properly, or Bengali properly, or Punjabi properly, or whatever properly. Now we have a problem with the language. You know this. You can't synthesize the language like Sanskrit and Prakrit. The Sanskrit Prakrit phenomenon is there throughout all Indian languages. That you have a formal version and you have an informal version. And the informal version is very, very different from the formal version. It's kind of mutually intelligible, but it's actually very different. So first of all, smoothen it out. And then once you've created economies of scale where translation of all the technical libraries and technical works available becomes economically feasible. Right now, it is not economically feasible to do it in every single language because, like Sree Iyer mentioned last week, the amount of human knowledge doubles every 18 months. By the time you finish translating even 1/10 of extant literature, within the next 18 months, the amount of knowledge is already doubled and it is growing geometrically. Your translation can only go arithmetically. There is no way you can catch up. Okay, so just learn binary, learn whatever. Please don't think of English as a language. Think of English as a skill. It's like mathematics. Mathematics, people say, is a language. It's a skill. I don't have that skill, but you should all get English skill. So no, let's do what is feasible. Let's not go back on, yes, it's my tradition, it's my language. Wonderful sentiments. I feel that way about Tamil and Bengali as well. The point is, I'm not stupid enough to learn science in Tamil and Bengali because I know that no matter what I try to do, the amount of translation is simply not going to be possible.
Abhijit, let's have a separate hangout about language, merits and demerits and so on, because I wanted to disagree, but this is your show and I don't want to waste time getting into one question. We have so many to cover. I think we should have a separate hangout on that for a future date. Shailesh Latkar wants to know, with China's rise and America's fall, how bad are things going to get for India and Indians?
Very, very bad, especially because India is neither rising nor falling. We are just existing. Okay, so India just goes on doing whatever, and then we're basically waiting for another, 1192 to happen.
And what happened in 1192 was Muhammad Ghori successfully defeating Prithviraj Chauhan. I think that's what you're referring to.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Next question is, today we have a good set of questions. Siddharth Pandit wants to know, how much of a threat Bangladesh is for India's security once Sheikh Hasina is no more at the helm of the affairs? Wouldn't it be a playground for the ISI? What should be India's steps to address this?
So very good question. See, the issue is we never built a redundancy policy after Sheikh Hasina. Because right now there is only two parties there. One is Sheikh Hasina and second is the Islamists. And then you have the army, which is trying to prop up the Islamists so that they can come play arbiter and say, oh, we're taking over military power to keep these two parties apart. So right now, if Sheikh Hasina goes, we don't have a good second line of defense out there, though the army will be sympathetic to us. But then what happens when the Islamists take over? So that's a very, very dangerous situation. The problem is India never thinks in terms of redundancies. Like we've discussed, we only think of first order effects of policy. We don't look at second order policy effects and third order policy effects. It's the same out here. So yes, I hope they think about it. Right now, we don't have any alternatives. One of the alternatives we could have always had, and this is why I always believe that Khalida Zia should have never been, completely neutralized the way she was, is because every time she came to power, the pendulum used to swing decisively in favor of India. As long as Sheikh Hasina was around, there was lots of hatred of India. The moment Khalida Zia came, there was lots of love for India. So, you need that kind of things happening out there. We don't do it very well, unfortunately.
The next question is from Aditya R. And in 2 minutes, could you share your Tambaram Vendaka curry recipe?
Tambaram Vendaka curry.
Sorry, Tambram.
Oh, Tambram. Yes. See, I do it in a microwave. First, you should chop your Vendaka. Then you don't apply oil or anything. Just put it into the microwave, cover it with cling film quite tightly, and steam it for 10 minutes on high. I'm giving you the number in this thing, but basically it should be cooked. There should be no more stickiness left in it during the steaming. Then what you do is very carefully open the cling film. You heat up nallenna. What is nallenna? Gingerly oil.
Gingerly oil or sesame oil.
Sesame oil. Untoasted sesame oil. Please don't use Chinese sesame oil. That will be an absolute disaster because it's too strong. So unroasted sesame oil, which is called gingerly oil. You heat that up, a good amount of it. You add whole urad dal to it, ultam parpu. You add
mustard.
Remove it from the heat. Then you add curry leaf and asafoetida hing. And then you add a teaspoon of either sambar powder or chili powder and turmeric powder. You pour it on the vendaka that's been steamed. And vendaka means bhindi, by the way. That's been steamed. Put salt on it, mix it really well, and then microwave it without cover or anything for 10 minutes. It will become absolutely crunchy, crisp, perfect to have with rasam sadam, sambar sadam, tair sadam.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. And those of you, by the way, what's his name? Aditya.
I asked for recipes on AMA, I say.
He paid for it too. Aditya, please let us know how your experience was. And if it's like 400 words or more, and if it is very interesting, we will publish it in PGurus along with a link to this channel and the clip of what Abhijit just said on how to make Tambram okra curry. Okra is also bhindi, it's also ladies' fingers. There are lots of names for it. By the way, here is a snippet. Today is the 100th birthday anniversary of former Prime Minister Sree P.V. Narasimha Rao ji, and he had okra every day. Every day he had okra as part of his food. I don't know how they were sourcing it.
Om Shanti for P.V. Narasimha Rao, the one true Prime Minister that India had, the one true reformer that India had. What a great soul, what a completely underappreciated soul. True South Indian, and bhindi was the secret of his success. Remember that.
Thank you very much.
I also have a recipe for Vendaka Vetakorambu, but you'll have to ask that question again if you want that recipe. I'm not just going to.
Yes, Aditya, your turn will come only after you have tried this recipe and you related your experiences to PGurus. We will publish it. I want to make this a habit because men should know how to cook. You should be able to give your significant other a rest for a few days or so. They need to also, put their feet up and enjoy whatever they want to do. Thank you very much.
And I've given you a microwave recipe. How much easier can it get than that?
Absolutely. Sai wants to know, the forts and cannons weren't upgraded, so it couldn't have been the fault of a single king. There was something wrong at the institutions. This is in connection with was it technology that was the reason for the disaster for the Vijayanagara Empire last week.
So see, the problem was that technology that we used, the forts, they were never actually upgraded for cannons. Have you noticed this? By the 1300s and by the late 1300s and early 1400s in Europe, you started having the star forts. Now, if you look at a star fort, what is important with a star? In a normal fort, people are attacking from here and you have to put your head out and throw stones, so you get shot by arrows and things like that. In a star fort, what happens is, because there is, sorry, I'm going to use a cigarette, this thing, to give you an example. What happens here is, this is a star fort, right? Now, if you're attacking here, the fellow here can shoot you while you're climbing the wall, even though he's protected from incoming gunfire or arrow fire or whatever here. So star forts are very, very important innovation. And that then became bastion forts, where a whole set of things were added. They went from height to depth, right? As in width, to withstand cannons and things like that. In India, you don't see a single star fort till the British come, and not one of the forts is cannon optimized. So there was a clear ossification of military technology and military learning in India. That in Europe, where from the end of the 1300s, basically early 1400s onwards, right up to the 1700s, you have star forts. In India, till the British come in the 1700s and build Fort St. William and Fort St. George, you don't have a single star fort. It was basic knowledge. I mean, imagine we're literally lacking almost 400 years behind the West in terms of technology at this point. Right, so it was very important. So there was, so forts ka marammat hua. They were repaired, but they were not renovated. Very important point. Remember that. By the 1500s, when Suleiman the Magnificent besieges Vienna, Vienna has already got a star fort. The old fortifications of Vienna have been taken down. It is now a star fort city when Suleiman besieges Vienna. In India, nothing of the sort. Our forts keep falling over and over and over again, and there's no this thing done, not against mining, not against cannons, not against anything. So there is a very genuine loss of knowledge. There is a loss of metallurgy. There is a lack of problem solving, and there is a lack of even learning knowledge from other places and bringing it here, or a lack of innovation to solve a problem here.
When was cement discovered, Abhijit?
Well, technically,
invented?
Romans used cement.
I mean, like not mortar, but cement.
Not mortar. Romans used concrete proper. So you look at a lot of the things that the Romans built in terms of the Colosseum and things. It was a primitive form of cement that used limestone. But I think cement proper comes in the 1800s, after the industrial age.
It's amazing that if you go to the Konark temple, and there's quite a bit of it still standing, and if you look at what was used to keep the rocks together, it was molten iron. It just blows my mind. You take a magnet, I mean, you will be, you'll have to really work hard to pull yourself away from some of these walls. Just incredible. Next time somebody visits Konark, let me know what your experience was.
You didn't tell me that before I went, no?
I didn't know you before you went, no.
No, you knew me before I went, no.
No, I only knew you, your mom. I did not know you.
You're telling, man. You knew me then also, man. You're not telling me, man.
All right. Let's go to next question from Chetan Pai. In a recent interview with Hoover's Institution, Jaishankar dodged specific questions about security threats to India from China and Pakistan. Your view on that?
Jaishankar always dodges specific questions. Okay, he's very good at
USP?
Airy, fairy, blank speeches that mean absolutely, you can interpret it in any way you want, and you can see post facto profundity in them. Nobody has ever caught him making a very precise prediction on anything, or a very precise prognostication on anything. So my reading of it is basically he was trying to hedge his bets.
Next question is from Dr. Ashutosh Kulkarni. 15 years ago, I would see a lot of mediocre white US doctors go to China as guest lecturers, and the Chinese would just take a photo with them. Do Chinese today still seek white validation in your experience?
Yes, they do. In fact, they try to seek all kinds of foreign validation. they're quite, there's a lot of my friends in Australia and America and Britain who have gone as English teachers to China. They just go to a village, they get paid a bomb, and it's also social validation in addition to learning English. Mostly those people refuse to learn English. It's mostly for the opportunity to be friends with a white person. And if you find a Indian like me who's dressed in funny in their terms, wearing a kurta pajama, you get a lot of attention from the locals. So when people saw me, there was a whole, when I was on the North Korean side of the demilitarized zone, there was a whole Chinese tourist bunch. And because I was wearing a saffron kurta with a Mao Zedong hat, they all wanted to take pictures with me about, oh, Hindu is how they say Indian. Um, and you'll get, once you go away from urban China into, away from the eastern seaboard, even Indians will get questioned a lot and things like that. They want to come up to you and talk to you. They want to talk to white people a lot more. So yes, they do have that need for external validation. They do.
One time I was traveling in rural Japan, and this was a cab. There's a station that I got down, and I had to go to the factory, and there was a 25-30 minute drive. And the driver was interested in learning English, and he would practice his English on me. And a lot of interesting things came on. He actually knew a lot about India, and I was surprised. It was 15 years ago, just around the time that Y2K had finished, and Indian engineers were beginning to go the length and breadth of the world offering services. So it was very, very interesting. But he actually knew a lot of things about various states in India. It just blew me away. Somewhere, somebody who's willing to learn can learn a lot.
I'm actually a Gaijin Tarento. Do you know what a Gaijin Tarento?
Foreign is Gaijin. What is Tanto?
Tarento, as in spelt like, Quentin Tarantino, Tarento, is actually the Japanese version of talent. They can't say talento, the L becomes R.
Yes.
So it becomes Gaijin. Gaijin is foreigner. I'm Gaijin Tarento because in 1999 or 2000, I actually acted in a Japanese TV commercial. So technically, I've been trying to find if you guys can find it, that would be really good. But it was actually stereotype. It was for a Japanese curry powder commercial. But yeah, try to find, see if you can get it. But yeah, technically I qualify as Gaijin Tarento.
Rahul Verma wants to know, why do you think the American right wing with significant think tanks and big endowments are losing the narrative battle to the left?
Think tanks are not losing the narrative battle to the left. The problem that is happening is there is a swell. The right wing is always conservative. We want to continue with the status quo. The left wing wants to change the status quo. So what you're seeing is there has been an institutional capture of education, which is pushing people a certain way. But much more importantly, what is happening is that the left have taken their entire roadshow out onto the streets. It is violent protests and it is coercion. And I don't think the narrative battle is lost or they're on the back foot. The problem is we think they are on the back foot because the entire narrative that we get, because most of the media in India, like in America, is left-wing, is that their source of validation is the American left-wing media. So like, in India, in America, when they have an Indian right versus Indian left debate, it'll usually be CPIM representing the left and the left wing of the Indian National Congress representing the right. They won't even accept BJP because that's not what the international validation mechanism tells them. It's like that for us. We get Democratic Party insiders as both left and right in here in this thing. We don't actually get the American right. And that's because the left is extremely global, the right is extremely localized. So they're not losing the narrative battle. You think you've lost the narrative battle because the pendulum has swung somewhat. It's going to come back. Wait and watch.
And the next question is another interesting one. NIK, I think it's Nick Kumar, Nikhil maybe. Sir, why do people from Iyer/Iyengar communities generally call themselves Brahmins even if they are doing other Varna jobs? I don't call myself a Brahmin, I call myself a Kshatriya. But please go ahead, Mr. Iyer.
I never refer to myself as a Brahmin. I refer to myself as God.
In Iyer we trust.
Yeah. So, I never have a Brahmin identity at all. I'm God on earth.
Having his own Q&A session.
Yeah.
Nikhil, the larger viewpoint here is Iyer was a word derived from what is Arya. Arya is somebody who's a respectable person. So it has got nothing to do with someone being a Brahmin. It was more about somebody who was knowledgeable and respected in the society. You don't have to be literate to be respected in the society, but these things kind of blurred over time. I think we need to go back and completely understand where our
Well,
compass was.
look,
That's where some
this
of
is
the
also Jati versus Varna, which became inherited over a period of time. If you're born into the community, you're apparently a member of the community, irrespective of whatever. So, it doesn't matter. So, for example, a lot of the Peshwas were Brahmins, but they were doing Kshatriya work, right? So,
yes.
yeah. So, I mean, it's across the board. There's nothing unique to it amongst Iyers and Iyengars.
Ioni Protocol wants to know, can India face large scale anarchy between Muslims and Hindus? Guess on after how many years? What is the aftermath? Will the Sunni community reform? Why don't we become a missionary religion, Hinduism?
Can you go one by one, please? There are too many
Yeah, I
questions.
know. Ioni, please spare us. You have got one question with 10 parts, and then you have got two such questions. You're killing us. So I'm just going to ask one question, and then you ask me if you want to answer more. Can India face large scale anarchy between Muslims and Hindus?
No, absolutely not. The state isn't prepared for it. It will collapse very rapidly, and no, you can't. Next question.
Will
Next.
the
Yeah.
yeah, will Sunni community reform?
No. Not in India. In Saudi Arabia, they will. In UAE, they will. That is all based on significant lack of political freedoms and significant modernization of both the mind and of society and the economy. In India, we have none of that. And in fact, democracy will always favor the obscurantist regressionist prick. So the opportunity for that reform will be non-existent. You also need societal reformation to break the kind of, because Muslim polity hasn't evolved since 1857. It's a very feudal polity. So in order to break that, you need to break society itself and industrialize, which is not happening. So no, under the current circumstances, ceteris paribus, no, not going to reform. No.
The next question from Ioni Protocol, BrahMos versus Yakhont, which is better?
They're the same missile now, because all the changes we implemented in the BrahMos, the Russians took it and they implemented in the Yakhont. So they've undercut our sales to every other country where we wanted to sell it. So it's the same missile right now. It started off, I mean, the BrahMos was meant to be a vastly improved version of the Yakhont, but it's the same missile now.
You say India doesn't have ramjet tech, but did ramjet air-to-air missile test and scramjet test successfully? What are
Yes.
your thoughts?
There's a big difference between testing something and operationalizing it. Best of luck trying to operationalize it. I am optimistic. It may work. Let's see.
Ioni, last question from you. You had like 5 questions continuously. 3 countries that have achieved this ramjet, scramjet stuff.
Russia has a very successful ramjet program. I think the Russians are testing a scramjet missile as well, if I'm not mistaken. The Americans have tested a scramjet missile, but Germany is the one that makes the ramjet motor of the Meteor missile. So Bayern Chemie is the company that does it. So they have that technology, but those would be the two really famous ramjet missiles and the one scramjet. I mean, the scramjet is still not operational, but yeah, the scramjet missile.
The next question is from Football Nerd. How do you see China-Taiwan war game panning out? with largely compromised US government in power?
Baba, there's no China-Taiwan war game. That'll be a war. So are you asking me about a war game? Because a war game is not feasible between primary enemy and primary opponent.
Okay, so if there is a war, what would happen in your opinion?
Taiwan would hold out for quite some time. It would really bloody China, but ultimately China would win without US intervention. I doubt very much the US will intervene. Not happening. Too
Well,
complicated.
it hasn't in Hong Kong where it had considerable business interests. So we have to see how that goes.
Yeah, it won't in case of Taiwan either. And remember, in Hong Kong, there were cast iron guarantees of one country, two systems, and all of that. They violated that. You can at least there you can argue it's sovereignty. But see here again, they could say sovereignty. The principle was laid by Obama over the Senkaku Daioh. He said the protection to Japan will be only given over Japanese territory, bringing into question if Senkaku Daioh was in fact Japanese territory. So if the Chinese attacked that, nobody knew. The Chinese didn't know, but the Japanese also didn't know if the Americans would protect their claims over that island. So again, with Taiwan, if China says, well, it's sovereign Chinese territory, the Americans might just walk away.
The next question is from Sajid Kumar. Why do we not hear IAF practicing with the Israeli Air Force at all? Wouldn't that be great for IAF?
Yes, it would. I don't know. I honestly don't know why they wouldn't, but we do practice together in a third venue, which is the red flag exercises. But one-on-one, I think it's considered politically sensitive or whatever.
Preet Malviya wants to know, what is a modern Indian identity? Can it be culturally based or economic identity is the only way, like the American dream?
You need to have a intersectional identity. It needs to be cultural and it needs to be economic. The economic needs to be a fallback for those who can't fit into the cultural identity. Right. So, for example, a Hindu state with economic opportunity for all. That would satisfy both the Hindutva brigade and everybody else because everybody gets an economic opportunity.
Next question from Pranav Naresh. Abhijit, why is Israel the only country in the world to prosecute children in military court?
I don't think they prosecute children. There is a certain age of majority. I'm quite sure they don't prosecute children. Unless it's particularly heinous crimes, in which case it still goes through certain very strict child protection laws and things like that. Are you sure? I'm not very sure that they prosecute children, boss.
Yeah, Pranav, if you are listening in, please expand on your question. What was the age of the child? The next question from Arun Gupta. Hey Abhijit, is there a way that public infrastructure like metro, bridges, columns, and girders can be built artfully and visually aesthetically like the Mughal red sandstone or Roman columns?
Yes, there is, but not in India. Because in India, you first need to develop aesthetic sense for that aesthetic sense to come. So, in America, when you go on these freeways and things like that, there's such slender, beautiful pillars and things like that, right? You've seen that in Germany as well. Why not in India? Because we don't have aesthetic sense to begin with. Where have you seen aesthetic? Tell me one great public, even the British public buildings after the initial construction phase. The only good architects, British architects India had were Chisholm, who built certain buildings in Madras and Calcutta and places like that. The idiots that were chosen for Delhi, Lutyens, was a typical yuppie, good for nothing, who was chosen in the Victorian era by the Victorians who were renowned for their bad taste. Which is why, if you look, Sree, can you bring up an image of South Block, North Block, or Rashtrapati Bhavan?
Yeah, I can. Keep talking. Yes. Yeah.
So what happens is, try to bring up a north-south block. Okay. So what happens is this fellow, he doesn't even know how to design properly. He forgets the entire visual, this thing. It was meant to be that the whole of Rashtrapati Bhavan should have been visible from India Gate. You can't, because the hump of the hill comes up before. So they made very bad mistakes even in constructing Rashtrapati Bhavan. and that entire office complex. If you go there today, it's impossible to maintain. It smells, it reeks of bad shit. Okay, so even the British architects weren't very good. Now, in all of this, we have had a loss of our own heritage and a loss of our own aesthetic sense and things like that. So, what you have is, you tell me, and I'm sorry if you think that Chandigarh is a great example of civic architecture. It really isn't. It's ugly as hell. And it's equally tasteless. I suggest you go see the statistics of the Paris riots. People who lived in Corbusier buildings are 10 times more likely to riot than people who live in non-Corbusier buildings. So, no, I'm dead serious. It's actually a real statistic. Corbusier neighborhoods tend to be depressed. Economically depressed. They tend to be extremely angry. And they tend to riot a lot more than the normal French farmer does and things like that. So, there's a whole set of things. But you tell me one great piece of modern architecture that we have in India. I would say there is none. There is literally none that comes to the mind, not in the last 70 years, and definitely not in Delhi in the last 100 years. Madras, yes. I mean, Madras has some amazing examples of architecture, just like Calcutta does, just like Bombay does. Like, look at the Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus in Bombay. Look at the United India Insurance building in Chennai, which sadly is broken.
Viewers, I'm really sorry for this, but we have
Now,
it
if
up
you
and
look
running.
at the pillars on the side, when you're looking at it north and south block, can you
Yeah.
see they're not properly placed at equal angles? It literally looks like Alfred E. Newman and Mad Magazine cover model, who used to have his teeth like this, and then one teeth would be black in between, almost like a missing tooth in between. So, these
Yeah.
buildings, they look like Alfred E. Newman with that one missing tooth. Oh, kala dant. Eh, करके they're misplaced. The columns are misplaced. It's two columns, one column here, and then huge gap in the center. The bugger doesn't even know how to put up columns properly. He doesn't even know what is the point of a veranda, what is the point of a wraparound balcony in a tropical climate like this. He doesn't even realize the climate that he is designing for. That is how stupid this man was.
Viewers, I think now everybody's saying everything is okay. I still hear some mutes. Those of you who think you're muted, you need to pull your thing to the live, then you'll be able to hear us. There was about 30-40 seconds of gap. Anyway, I think we're back to the normal stuff, Abhijit. So let me continue to the next question. But you made a very telling point. What you mentioned about a missing tooth was caught by a lot of the viewers. So I think point taken, plus the fact that this was not built for Indian climates is also a very important point. Ishank Sagar wants to know, do you see Mr. Modi acting against some of the most incompetent babus who advised him in Corona and created all the mess?
No, absolutely not. Babu Devaya Namaha as far as he's concerned.
Next question, same Ishank Sagar wants to know, why is India...
Is it a shloka or is it a song? Pitatvameva, Matatvameva.
Yeah, so the song is Tvameva Mata Pita Tvameva Tameva Bandhu Sakha Tvameva. It means you are my mother, you are my father, you are my guru, you are my friend.
Modi wakes up in the morning and he sings that to the cabinet secretary and all the secretaries. They assemble in the morning and he does aarti to them and sings Pitatvameva, Matatvameva, Tumihi Bandhu Sakhatvameva to them. They are God.
Ishank Sagar wants to know again, why is India so against any sort of engagement with the Taliban? Shouldn't India at least open some informal back channel talks with Taliban? Yeah, they can send Chidambaram.
Yes, I've written a paper about this at Chanakya Forum. Please go check it out. I've done a podcast with this with Kushal Mehra. Please check that out. I'm not going to repeat it over and over again. I've written about it in great detail. I won't do it justice if I condense it down to 1 minute. But yes, it's a very stupid policy. It needs to go.
Okay, Vidya Amirapu wants to know, the girlfriend of the Punjab CM, Arusa Alam, I think, is that not a security risk?
Yes, it is.
But then why did the educated electorate of Punjab elect him then? They
Look,
knew
it's not
this.
the fault of the electorate. The point is who gave her security clearance to be here, who keeps renewing her visa, who gives her a PIO card and whatnot, who allows her to be in an area where matters of state are discussed. If you had any serious government, I mean, visas and entry and exit into India is central government policy.
Now I hear that the Gandhis are trying to clip the wings of Captain Amrinder Singh using Navjot Singh Sidhu as a tool. Your thoughts?
Captain Amrinder Singh is infinitely better than Navjot Singh Sidhu. So if you think Navjot Singh Sidhu is going to be better than or more pliant than Captain Amrinder Singh, but that is the Congress mentality. They would rather lose Punjab than allow a strongman who treats them like dirt in private, who is, let's face it, their social superior. The Gandhi family is nobody compared to the Maharaj of Patiala's family. Technically, the Gandhi family should be retainers for the Maharaj of Patiala. They should be his fan bearers when he is sitting down. The mother should be holding the fan. The son should be should be holding the chhatra. The son should be waving the fan, and the sister should be waving the fan from the other side. But unfortunately, in the Congress scheme of things, they've elevated themselves over the Maharaja of Patiala. But it is what it is. So he doesn't believe that they are his social equals, and he treats them with a great deal of contempt in private. They are not going to tolerate that for much longer. So they will try. The problem is, without him, they can't win the state.
And read up on the Patialas in Freedom at Midnight by Larry Collins and Dominique Lapierre. Very interesting stuff there. I remember reading it 15, 20 years ago. Still etched in my memory. And next question, Indranil Gokhale wants to know, what is being done, if at all, to remove UPSC from the clutches of leftists and India apologists?
Have you heard of the great Indian invention called zero? It's a great Indian invention. It was invented in 732 AD. Well, we know for a fact it was invented in 732 AD, as in it's notationally put down in about 700 or so AD. And we were so taken in by that discovery, we decided to reduce ourselves collectively to zero. So, shunyata, as Rahul Gandhi puts it. So that is what is happening on that score. Great Indian invention, zero.
Here's an interesting question from What This Video, WTV, is. We see that any right-wing person comes with properly researched data. Hardly any other right-wing person supports him. But so many left-wing people start defaming that RW person together without any proof or any specific thing. Why do you think is the reason? What do you think is the reason for this?
One, the right wing is severely resource constrained. They don't have an ecosystem where everybody is incentivized to prop up the other person. So there's a lot of infighting even within the right wing. Number one. Number two, generally the right wing is always across the world. It's a very individualistic thing. So there will be far greater diversity of opinion in the right than there ever will be in the left. The left thrives on third-ratedness. Its entire narrative is one of oppression and victimhood. So when they find somebody third-rate who can suitably fit into the category of either being oppressed or being a victim, they will celebrate him or her and push them up.
The next question is...
But I'd be very curious, who specifically are you referring to? Because if you've got specific examples, I'll tell you why certain things were done certain ways.
Okay, that is a follow-up for you. Let me see. What is it? We something. What this video? Next question from Sid S. Reframing. We see that most in the non-left lack a certain class and just appear to be sloganeers. How can someone be apart and develop a sophisticated taste and coolness without compromising on opinions and being a lefty? Well, look at and read up Abhijit Iyer's work. He has managed to do that.
Thank you. So much praise. No, but seriously, you invest in yourself. Okay, you invest in yourself, unfortunately, because this government doesn't believe in create an ecosystem. So unlike Nehru, who could, throw money at every third rater who was willing to write poems about how the sun shone out of his ass, for the right, the only thing to do is to invest in yourself. Have a good job, invest in yourself. And it's that human value addition and climbing up the value chain, up the ladder, that's important. I invest a lot in myself. Maybe everybody should, but because right now there is no ecosystem to do it.
Okay, the next question is a good one from Pratik. Why is the world not able to demand China reparations for the damage? The other day, Trump in North Carolina raised this. I think he asked for $10 trillion, or at least forfeit the debt owed to China.
Well, because they spent most of their time, parrying attention away from China. So the window is now lost. You can't retrospectively ask for compensation because the window of opportunity was permanently lost. That's it. I mean, today, with Holocaust reparations, it happened immediately after the Holocaust. What is the point of Shashi Tharoor writing a book today saying that Britain should pay back all of this 70 years after we said go?
The only thing I think the British paid for India is the money that they owed the Indian government because Indian troops were in action in World War. And that money foolishly got spent into 5-year plans, if I remember correctly.
It was $1.5 billion in those days' money, which is about $300 billion in today's money. And Nehru managed to squander it in 5 years. We didn't see any returns on investment.
And after that, he started devaluing the currency because that was the only way he could borrow money from.
And after that, he started nationalizing everything.
Yes. What a rotten state of affairs. Shalab Pradhan wants to know, there have been some reports that the blackout in Mumbai was due to a cyber attack by PRC. Is this true? Can you talk about our capability in the cyber domain? Shalab, we have talked extensively about this, not with Abhijit, but under Daily Global Insights. We did an extensive series of talks on this. Please go ahead.
Yes, it is true. And our capacities are virtually non-existent. I think I've spoken on this. This question has been asked 2-3 times to me as well. And I think I've answered it in great detail, showing you how many times our defense and MEA computers got hacked in by the Chinese and things like that. Kudangulam got hacked last year, I think, either last year or year before last, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, it happens very, very often. Our offensive capabilities are non-existent. Our defensive capabilities, again, non-existent. Well, I mean, there's something, but it's not much. So, no, we don't have much capability in there, but go through the past episodes of AMA. This has been answered quite extensively.
And viewers, I think we Indians have a bit of a mindset problem, adjustment problem also. We buy one car for life. We think one computer will be enough for our life. We think one phone will be enough for our lives. All these things are now changing so fast. You have to keep up with the changing times because the newest phone that you get on the market, maybe it is a little bit expensive, but it's got some of the best features that you can expect, especially in this video connected world. The best video camera technology and digital camera technology is coming on a phone. So I can't, that mindset adjustment has to happen. A lot of people I see, go ahead.
And go ahead, just one other thing for Indians, please don't take this as a validation of BMW, Audi, Mercedes. Because they're really, really shitty technology. They put in so much technology there, it's unserviceable in India. It fails in 2-3 years. So do not buy a German car, do not buy a British car, just buy Japanese and Korean cars. Have you ever noticed all those terrorists, ISIS terrorists, either in Somalia or Mali or in Syria, why do they always drive Isuzu, Hyundai or Toyota trucks? Have you ever thought about that? Or Prados? It's because, those can skip maintenance checks for 3-4 years and nothing will happen to them. Right? So Koreans and Japanese put in only as much technology as can be ruggedized and hardened. The Germans just keep putting in technology because they can, and it keeps failing. This was the standard case of, and this is it's sort of a generational flaw in them, because more German Tiger tanks were lost to mechanical failure than they were lost to the Red Army. More. Okay,
Actually,
so
there's a yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish it. Finish it.
so yeah, so don't buy German, buy Japanese or Korean.
Manthan wants to know, why is Ranjit Singh not as popular as Shivaji when he actually stopped the invasion in Punjab? Was Akbar secular?
What invasion did Ranjit Singh stop specifically?
I think he defeated the British, right? And it's more like an inversion of the thing. He was trying to make stand alone as an empire.
Really. Look, he was more about building an empire, and by this time, most of the invasions that were coming were chutku mutkus from Afghanistan. Because remember, Afghanistan by this point, the Durrani Empire had disintegrated, or was in severe chaos at that point of time. And Shivaji, on the other hand, was the underdog. So underdog stories against a particularly nasty emperor will always gain more traction. Also, it was the fact that Shivaji's campaigns were militarily much more innovative. We saw what happened to the Sikh state once it comes up against the British Empire, right? Which is it collapses very rapidly.
Right. Also, viewers, there is a female warrior or king/king of the Maratha Empire called Tarabai. She was the one who was chasing Aurangzeb in his last days all over Deccan. The guy was being chased to his death. It's called she's called Tarabai, and the legend of Tarabai. I think there's a book or a movie that's going to be released. I'm really curious on how much of the history they're going to capture. It's a phenomenal history piece that has not been read by most Indians because it's mostly in Marathi. I'm hoping that it will come out and see the light of day. Anything on that? Do you know about Tarabai?
No.
Yes. Do you know that this guy died in Ahmednagar, right? Aurangzeb?
He did? I did not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a small place in Maharashtra, but she basically was chasing the heck out of him. See, he defeated the Tanasha, that is the Deccan Empire in Hyderabad, because by bribing one guy, because they couldn't breach the fort, and they had to bribe somebody from inside to get in. And after that, he just got too tired, and there was people beginning to. And by the time Shivaji was well established, he had gone. Sambhaji came. Sambhaji was dealt with in a very cruel manner by Aurangzeb. But even though the Peshwas came and went, the fight that they kept fighting the Aurangzeb, they never let go. And Tarabai was the one who decided that she will chase this guy to his death. And that's what happened. This part of the history needs to be told because that's a fantastic story. A lady warrior leading the Marathas to chase this guy all over Maharashtra. Anyway,
what was the second question?
The second question was Akbar secular?
Yes, surprisingly he was. He was equal opportunity tyrant. He would kill you if you were Hindu and got in his way. He would also be equally nasty with you if you're a Muslim and got in his way. And that I'm perfectly okay with. As long as you are equal opportunity in whatever you do, you are fundamentally not a bigot. Okay. Plus the fact that he converted out of his own religion and created his own religion, because apostasy is the greatest sin in Islam. Right. So you can criticize him for a lot of things because it remained a very pitiless and exploitative economy. It was a very uneven, imbalanced economy. Too much of the wealth was extractive plunder that went into the court. But Akbar was secular in the end. Even though he called himself Ghazi, Fazi and all of that, how many Ghazis do you know who commit apostasy? So there was a fundamentally secular thing about him. So Akbar is, I find it very hard to go against Akbar, Shah Jahan and Jahangir generally.
And viewers, I think please stop sending in your questions. We still have a fair amount of questions to go through. and I don't think we can accept any more questions. Anything that comes that we can't address, we will try to do it, like queue it in the next session. Thank you very much. And Sriram wants to know, can we expect AIM, that is you, to be working for the government as an advisor / or on a project?
No.
Prajas Narayan, what is your opinion on Nitin Gadkari? Why has he been sidelined in this fight against COVID when he has shown that he can get things done?
So basically, why I won't work with government is that generally, if you're going to tell everybody ki tum nange ho, call out the emperor's new clothes, you're going to make lots of enemies. So they only want people who say the same thing that they do in 100 different ways and try to make it sound more intelligent. So that is how this particular ecosystem works. Gadkari has done the same thing. He's shown he's extremely efficient. People don't like that. Plus, there's the paranoia of the current leadership that the moment you are competent or efficient, they start thinking of you as a political threat.
There is a big plus that Modi has that many other capable leaders do not. That is the capability to win elections and be an acceptable candidate.
But remember, winning
India.
Not the same as running a country. And we established it during the Turkish invasions. The Turks knew how to fight. They didn't know how to run an economy. They didn't know how to govern a country. So there's a big difference. I mean, by that measure, Nehru was the best prime minister, followed by Indira Gandhi being second best prime minister. How good were they at governance? So elections are not a measure of if you can. Elections are a measure of you can win elections. They're not a measure if you can.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're suggesting is you don't have to be the leader of the government, but you can lead the party to win elections. I mean, it's just a basically division of labor. There's nothing wrong.
But see, the point here is that you assume that because you are the election winner, therefore you are the best person to run the country.
You can run the country, but you can deliberate. And
how badly Narasimha Rao lost the election. He was the best prime minister we ever had.
Yes.
There you go.
That was, I thought, because of internal sabotage, Abhijit.
Whatever it was, he lost the election. Full stop.
Look, he tried his hand. Okay, let's not say that he didn't try.
Vajpayee also lost the election.
Vajpayee, I don't know much about to say whether he was a great.
That's the way
prime
it is.
minister.
India gets yatha praja tatha raja. India gets what it deserves.
You have turned the phrase on its head. Ihdinag Sharma. God, is that your name? IHDNAG. Can you pronounce it? IHDNAG. D as in donkey.
One sec. Let me write this down so I can read it out.
Indigo, horse, Delta, Nancy, Alpha, George.
Idnakag.
Idnag Sharma. Sharma, I think. Do you think the counterculture movement of the 60s has some bearing on today's wokeism? If yes, does it invalidate some of the great art from that period, 60s?
The counterculture movement of that time was rooted in a lot of things that were happening at that time. So, for example, this sort of brave new world, the end of segregation, a reaction to McCarthyism, things like that. This one is the revenge of communism. Two completely different starting points, very different genesis, though they were both kind of flower power movements. Like, even in the 60s, it was kind of derided as flower power and all of that. They were far more rooted than the people are now. Wokeism is completely different. No comparison between the two. Second, because wokeism is rooted essentially in leftism, what you see is leftism. I actually wrote, the piece was called A Loss of Inheritance. I wrote it for the 70th anniversary of or the 100th anniversary of the Russian Revolution in the Daily Pioneer. Go check it out. It was how communism actually destroyed the great art of Russia. It was actually the heroes of early Soviet Russia were actually products of the Tsarist regime, who got empowered by the Bauhaus style and things like that because of the end of imperial control and that power vacuum in between. And that period lasted only up to Lenin. The moment Stalin comes, he executes all of them and he makes automatons out of everything. Also, the period of great Russian art, modern Russian music comes from them, Shostakovich, Prokofiev, and things like that. It ends at once Stalin comes. After that, everything gets formalized, regulated. All art is regulated. All architecture is regulated. There are some amazing works of Russian architecture and art prior to Stalin, which you will see. Read that piece. I've gone into it in great detail. What you see with wokeism is the same thing happening with art and architecture that happened under Stalin. In Stalin, there was the crime of formalism. It was actually terribly formal, though they used to decry it as formalism. And this kind of art control was instituted by Mao Zedong and Ceausescu and all those people. It was a standard communist practice. Today, it is done on the basis of diversity. Diversity this, diversity that. The most hideous crap will get selected because of diversity quotas. There's actually a diversity quota in Oscars. A movie can't be nominated for Oscars unless it shows one gay relationship, has a certain percentage of colored people in lead roles, who have to be there for a certain period of time. It has to show certain non-binary genders, etc., etc., etc. It is so bad that there's actually an Anne Boleyn that BBC has come out with, where Anne Boleyn is a black lady. Yeah, that's the latest.
Okay.
I think it's episode 2 right now, or episode 1. I think it's this week sometime. But yeah, that's what's happened right now. So they're two completely, just because they were protest movements, they're not the same thing. Just because they were both kind of naive in their ideas, it's not the same thing. Just because they were not right wing doesn't mean that there's the same thing.
Question for you, Abhijit. I finished watching Caliphate or Caliphate, and very, very, very well done Swedish series. I think everybody should watch it, if not for the mindset that many Indians seem to have that Netflix is left oriented. I don't think so. You look at Fauda, you look at Caliphate, they are just looking at good stories to tell, and if some of them happen to be in one way or the other, so be it. But you shouldn't, I think, let one bad series or one series that seems to be in a certain angle tar the entire company with the same brush. That's my thoughts. Feel free to agree or disagree with me on Netflix.
Yes, I
Go
agree.
ahead. Thank you. The next question is Vijay Nemuri wants to know, Abhijit, does heritage rice contain arsenic?
No. Why would it contain arsenic?
I don't know why he's asking that. Is there any way we can get it in the US? Instead of rice cereal, can we give mashed heritage rice to babies? That
Look,
is sadam, right? Yeah.
it's sadam. The thing is, heritage rice, you cannot, there are standards for the heritage rice that I told you about last time. It has to be grown organically. There's no usage of fertilizers. Those people are very careful in how they curate it and things like that. So you will not find whatever. But of course, you can use it as baby food. The thing is, right now, it's just so niche. The question is, do you actually want to use it as baby food? Because it's obviously going to be more expensive.
Next question from Shivin Chowdhury. Oh, by the way, the mystery of that name has been solved. It is the reverse of Gandhi.
Oh, okay.
Shivin Chowdhury wants, what is the scope of medical diplomacy? Will India benefit from doctors as IFS officers?
No, not really. No. Um, no, absolutely not. See, IFS is a skill of diplomacy. Medicine is a completely different skill set. Doctors don't necessarily make good diplomats.
Prakhar Jaiswal wants to know, how should India handle Pakistani plan of World Conference of Muslim countries next year? This is different from the OIC conference.
Let them have it. It'll be a publicity stunt in itself where everybody will have to be taken in armored buses and armored tanks from one venue to another. That in itself will tell you how much those poor scholars will, feel that they are at home in Pakistan, number one. Number two, expect extremely low caliber attendance. If you remember, the maximum number of viewers that Ertugrul has is from Pakistan. Yet, most of the caste, the top caste of Ertugrul, do not come to Pakistan. They will probably give a Pakistani channel an interview once a year at most, if that, because that is not their main market. Because it may be the biggest market, but is also the lowest disposable income market that they're seen in. And they really don't want to get killed out there. Third, we don't need to do anything because the circus of terrorists that Pakistan has bred, they will be more interested in bombing that conference than RAW ever will. So maybe you can get RAW to tell those some of those guys where the conference is being held, and I'm sure Lashkar-e-Toiba or Hizbul Mujahideen will be more than happy to go set off a bomb out there.
Hey, speaking of bodyguards and armed people helping out all these, coming with the political leaders, have you seen the Sultan of Brunei being accompanied by a robot? There's
Really?
a video of that.
No.
You haven't seen that video? Oh, guys, do us a favor. If you can find that link, it's on YouTube. He's walking in an airport and you can see the robot. It's about a 30% bigger than a normal human being. I think 11 feet or something like that. He's swinging about. He makes a spectacle of himself. Very interesting. Anyway, the next question is Prakhar Jaiswal wants to know, we already had this. Harsh Raj wants to know, how can India surpass China in terms of GDP?
You can't. That bandwagon is gone. China is the last industrial power. From now on, it's additive 3D manufacturing. That window is perpetually closed to us. There's nothing you can do about it now.
Is
And
it possible?
you can't move into the information age without first conquering the manufacturing age. So that door is closed to you.
Abhijit, what are your thoughts on if, let's say, China gets into a military conflict, either with Taiwan or with Japan, and let us say eventually the US comes to the side of the smaller country and China gets defeated, would it break up into 4 parts or more?
China?
Mm-hmm.
No. China will hold itself together through sheer brute force. It's that simple.
They are 90% Han now, and the remaining 10% they are trying to convert very, very hard right now.
They will. They succeed. I mean, this homogenization mission has been constant for the last 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years. It's not going to change. Right? Because if you look at what is modern day China today, it is actually the culture of Sichuan. It is the culture around Xi'an, around the Shang dynasty and Xia and Shang dynasty, which then ultimately became the Qin dynasty and conquered most of central China, then northern China, then southern China. So it's you're not going to break them apart. Because especially using technology tools, the way they've bound the country together, the way they've homogenized their country together, is scary as hell. I hate China. I hate going to China because in a country that big, you should have significant variances. There should be significant diversity. You don't see that. It's all the damn same thing.
How much of rural Japan have you traveled through?
A lot.
Isn't that very different from what you see in Tokyo?
Extremely. I mean, in Japan, there are neighborhoods even within Tokyo where you feel you're in completely different cities.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had this very great experience. I went to a small town which had a huge factory of National Panasonic, and I was staying at a hotel, and the owner of the hotel actually makes breakfast for every individual. Each and every person had their own breakfast made. It took about 15-20 minutes, and she knew that I was vegetarian, and she cooked up something really tasty and nice. But what I was amazed with was that they had a personalized attention to every customer who was staying in the hotel. 30 people or 35 people were there, but it was amazing. It wasn't like, you had this cornflakes and this dabba and that dabba, and you go and pour whatever you want.
I
It felt
always,
so good.
those are ryokans. I always stay in places like that because they're awesome.
Yeah, yeah. It was really nice. And next question. Sai Shreyas wants to know, what do you think of TM Krishna's wokeism and open support to the DMK and left?
Congratulations to him. It's not going to resurrect your music career. You haven't been able to sing for a long time. If you think this resurrects your career, congratulations. But you'll always be in the same league as Swara Bhaskar is as an actor. B movies and B Arangetrams and things like that.
P. Ram wants to know, which Indian language can be developed easily and quickly to teach science, technology, accounts, computer programming, etc., and replace English?
Binary. Learn to speak binary.
That is a language.
That is a language. Learn to speak binary.
One of the problems with binary is, even for small things, you have to string together a lot of digits.
Yeah. So come up with a condensed binary.
Well, that was hex, right? Hex was 4 digits together. You could. Anyway, we can take a discussion in offline, because sometimes these things can be very interesting. We can go very deep into it and then come back, and there are other people waiting for their questions to be asked. Ishank Sagar wants to know, please, why can't India simply learn from China and her conduct when it acted subservient to the US earlier to checkmate the USSR? Why shouldn't we kiss and make up with China?
We've tried. The issue is China is very clear that they will not allow India to do to China what they did to with America to the USSR. So their primary goal is to destroy India. They don't want to have too many powerful states around them. They've already got Russia, they've got Japan, they've got Korea, they've got Singapore, they've got Australia, and they've got India, and they don't want that. Right? So that room for negotiation ended long back.
Here is an interesting question for you. Rajesh Kumar wants to know, I don't have a microwave. Abhijit, tell me a Tamilian curry recipe that can be cooked quickly.
Okay. Vetakorambu. Okay.
Go for it.
So what you do is, you first dry roast methi dana. Now, I can't teach you how to dry roast methi dana, but that is half the skill. I did manage to get a roasted methi dana powder of Big Basket, which is actually really good. I was quite impressed by it because they roasted it perfectly. So if you want, then keep that. Roast it and grind it. Then what you do is put in quite a bit of gingerly oil. And in that, what you do is you crackle mustard seed, and you add urad dal and chana dal, quite a bit. I add about 1 handful each of urad dal and chana dal. And when it starts low heat, when it starts browning beautifully, then you add curry leaf, red chili powder, and turmeric powder. If you want, you can just put in sambar powder, but I put in red chili powder, hot red chili powder, Kashmiri red chili powder, and turmeric powder, as well as some dhania powder. And you dry roast, roast it on very low heat in that oil, fry it, and then you add a lot of tamarind water to it. ठीक है ना? And you add lots of tamarind. Like I take about this big a ball of tamarind and add it to that. You cook it till it starts thickening. If you want, you can add a bit of rice flour for it to thicken. Now, there's several variations on this. I do a Nartanga Korambu, which is you add green chilies and citron. It's a kind of a citrus fruit ka juice instead of, in addition to the tamarind. But the basic thing is just tamarind. Then when it thickens, you take it off the heat, add jaggery to it, and that roasted methi powder, add it there, and you eat it with rice and ghee.
One small variation or thing to look out for in his recipe, when the urad dal starts turning brown, immediately add the other next ingredient, because urad dal will turn dark brown very quickly. So just watch out for that particular point.
So that's why you do the entire thing on extremely low heat. There's also another thing. If you get idiyappams, ready-made idiyappams, you should try Sri Lankan sodhi, which is the extract of coconut milk, methi dana, turmeric, onion, salt, and green chilies. Just slice it all, mix it into the coconut milk, and put it on a double boiler. You shouldn't cook it over direct heat. You should cook it over boiling water. And when it warms through, it doesn't need to cook. It just warms through. You take it off the heat and squeeze lime juice on it. It literally takes 2 minutes to cook. Never comes to a boil. Otherwise, the green chili, the raw green chili, the raw onion, and the raw salt will split the coconut milk. That's why it never comes to a boil. So just do that and eat it with idiyappams. It's called Sri Lankan sodhi. It's the most delicious thing you'll ever try. So remember, green chili, onion, methi dana, salt, turmeric powder, mix it into coconut milk, and warm it through. Don't cook it, warm it through in a double boiler in a pan over boiling water. Don't even wait for it to cook. There's a certain distinctive smell that comes. Just remove it.
Nose is as much an ingredient as actual job, because your nose has to be really, really looking out for all these transitions, because that's where you capture the best taste. So Ritu Patil wants to know, will governments hiring an HR firm to bring changes in bureaucracy be helpful?
No, because HR firms can go horribly, horribly wrong, and there are no consequences for those HR firms. So you can't outsource it to an HR firm. All right. There's also the problem of corruption in an HR firm. There's the problem of compromise in an HR firm, where they might trade a certain job for information later on from that job, which is why no government outsources it to HR firms.
The next question is from Rahul Verma. Your views on Ram Swarup, Sitaram Goel, and Savarkar.
Fantastic people. I love them, all of them.
Next question. CS, are you aware of the neo-reactionaries and the concept of cathedral? Curtis Yarving, Nick Land, Spandrel, etc. Out of syllabus, sorry. Out of syllabus, sorry. Next question.
No, what is the context? Who are these people? What are they?
They are neo-reactionaries. Neo-reactionary. I don't know. See, somebody expects you to know everything off the top of your head. Rishikesh G wants to know, in one of your sessions, Abhijit, on a question regarding what was the major cause of brain drain in India came up. Could you ask him or post an answer as why? He didn't give a full reply. What is the cause for brain drain in India?
A lack of opportunity, a lack of ease of living. For the same effort you put in here, you can achieve so much more in America. You can have a much better lifestyle. You can have a discrimination-free lifestyle. Life is easier. You don't have to struggle to get your kids into school. You don't have to struggle to get a bed in hospital. You don't need sifarish for everything. That's the main thing. You're free to do what you want. Economic freedom, that's the main driver. That's why people don't want to stay back here. That's why you leave.
Professor RV has been a big advocate of small government, and he said only 4 departments are needed. The rest of the departments can be dissolved. These people can be paid and sent home for leave because they are actually stopping things from happening.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. So the only thing you need is statistics collation, regulation, regulation in judiciary, police, internal and external security, and some kind of fiscal regulatory board. That's about it. You don't need anything else.
Last 2 questions. Varghese Abraham wants to know, it seems that the BJP has not been able to accept its defeat in West Bengal. What do you think about this?
They've not been able to accept their defeat, but also remember, uh, I don't think Mamata Banerjee has been able to accept her victory. She's being extraordinarily violent. There's no denying that. Right. And the BJP has been shameful as always. It always abandons its own, but that is what the BJP does. It's the BJP, the Bharatiya abandonment party.
Surjit Swain wants to know, hi Abhijit, in case of hostilities, how many CBGs will the plan put into IOR, and can we expect American help in such a case? Please expand it for me.
Okay. Carrier battle groups into the Indian Ocean region. Look, I've never been in favor of CBGs for India. First, you need to do proper sea denial, then you can go up to sea control. Right now, we've got all the assets for sea control without all the ancillary equipment to do proper sea control. And this is the problem, it's classic case of for want of a nail, the kingdom was lost. You know that poem, na? For the want of the nail, the horseshoe was lost. For the want of the horseshoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the knight was lost. For want of a knight, the battle was lost. For want of a knight, the king was lost. For want of a kingdom, the kingdom was lost. It's that. We didn't have proper anti-submarine warfare helicopters till the last purchase for Sikorsky's went out, but we were buying aircraft carriers. See, you need to do things in blocks. Each is a capability addition. We start, to give you a house analogy, what we do is, instead of building ground basement up, we start building the 3rd floor first, then we build the 2nd floor, then we build the 4th floor, then we build the 1st floor, and then finally we build the basement. It doesn't work that way. We start putting in the water heaters and the air conditioners even before the building has gone up. It doesn't work that way. So there's a fundamental flaw out there.
Well, that was the last question, and it brings to close today's hangout.
To just give him an answer to his question, for every 3 carriers, you can always deploy 1 carrier battle group. Worst case scenario, you can deploy 1 carrier battle group for every 2 aircraft carriers, because you need 1 out doing combat, 1 ready to leave, and 1 in deep maintenance. So the optimal ratio is 3:1. For every 3, you have 1 out.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. And with that, we bring today's Ask Abhijit session to a close. And we will appreciate your inputs. Please do join our membership list. Also, subscribe to our channel. And if you have any comments, feel free to leave them on our page. Abhijit and I always would like to read what you're thinking and how our session has been. We are continuously trying to improve. In Abhijit, I found somebody who's willing to learn new things, willing to read. Don't give up that habit. Read. That opens up your views like you will not believe. And thank you once again, Abhijit. And we'll be back again next Monday, same time, same online channels. Namaskar.
And friends, I just wanted to announce that Sree Iyer has promised to buy me a Ferrari Portofino. So please contribute very generously to his channel. Also, PGurus, also known as Please Buy Poor Abhijit Ferrari channel. So yes, please contribute generously. Buy this poor Brahmin a Ferrari. Thank you. I'm very poor. I beg you, please give money so that I can drive Ferrari. Thank you. Minimum requirement of life. Well, vetri well.
I thought you were going to use a Ferrari to carry it over your head, and then that's what people are looking at, not.
I'll wear kavadi in Ferrari and go around.
Thank you very much, Abhijit.
Thank you.